Chapter 8. Jessica smiled to herself as the others rushed to help Madame search the studio for the missing doll. She did not join them. It served Madame Andre right to have her doll stolen, she thought. Maybe it would wreck the entire recital. She pictured Cammie and Carrie and Joe and Melissa, and especially Elizabeth, crying their eyes out. It would serve them all right. She stuffed her leotard and tights into her canvas bag and slipped out of the studio while no one was looking. But instead of heading for home, she stopped and leaned against the building. For the 100th time, she saw the vision of herself performing Swanilda. She could hear the music as she did a perfect pirouette. She could hear the audience applauding wildly. But as her eyes cleared, she was once more standing beside the studio instead of on stage at Sweet Valley High School. Tears filled her eyes. Why had Madame Andre been so unfair? Jessica wiped away her tears with the back of her hand and started to walk home alone. When she reached the Wakefields' neat, split-level house, she hurried inside and ran up to her room. She didn't want anyone to know she was there. It had been hard enough facing the class after Elizabeth got the solo part, but how could she ever face her parents? A few minutes later, she heard Elizabeth come home. Opening her bedroom door a crack, Jessica listened as Elizabeth broke the news to their mother. "Mom, guess what? I got the lead. I'm going to be Swanilda. Isn't that great?" "Elizabeth, that's wonderful," Jessica heard her mother exclaim. "It's a shame that both you and Jessica couldn't dance the solo, but I'm sure your sister's happy for you too." Jessica closed the door as tears welled up again. How could anyone expect her to be happy for Elizabeth? It was totally unfair. Downstairs, Mrs. Wakefield put her arm around Elizabeth. "I'm really proud of you. All your hard work paid off." "It was a lot of work," Elizabeth admitted, "but I'm glad I practiced. It's hard to believe, though, that I'm actually going to dance the solo. Ooh, it makes me shiver just to think about it." Elizabeth danced around the room with excitement. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine the scene, but instead of stage, she saw Jessica's face, teary-eyed and miserable, just the way she knew her twin must be right now. "Mom, what about Jessica?" Elizabeth asked. "What am I going to do? She worked hard, too. I've never seen her try so hard. She keeps saying Madame Andre picked me because I'm her pet. But I never did anything to try to get Madame to like me. That can't be true, can it?" "Of course not, dear. Jessica is used to getting what she wants, and she wanted that solo part very much. It may take a little time, but I'm sure she'll be happy for you." Elizabeth sighed. "I sure hope so." Upstairs in her room, Jessica was anything but happy. The ache in her heart was almost too much to bear. "It isn't fair," she whispered over and over again to her image in the mirror. "I danced much better than Elizabeth. Why doesn't Madame Andre like me?" A soft knock sounded at the door. "Elizabeth," Jessica thought. "She can't just leave me alone. She has to come into my room and rub it in." "Go away," Jessica called. "I'm busy." "Come on, Jess, let me in a second." It was Stephen. What could he want, she wondered. "Okay, but only for a minute." The door swung open, and in came Stephen, once again dressed for Halloween. This time he was covered with an old khaki army blanket with holes cut in it for his eyes. The blanket was almost covered with leaves and dead branches, which Stephen had obviously glued to it. "The creature from the Black Lagoon at your service. How do I look?" Jessica stared at him in amazement. "Disgusting," she said. "Great, that's what I like to hear. I thought you were going to be a robot." "I changed my mind. The foil was too shiny. It would be impossible to sneak up on the Mercandy house wearing that stuff. But in this..." Jessica didn't answer. Everyone in Sweet Valley said that the Mercandy's run-down mansion was haunted. Kids always went there on Halloween to play pranks on old Mr. and Mrs. Mercandy. Ordinarily, the mere mention of the Mercandy place sent shivers up and down Jessica's spine, but today she was too upset over losing the part of Swinelda to care. "So what do you think?" Stephen insisted. Do I make a good creature from the Black Lagoon or not?" "You make a great one. Now go scare somebody else. I'm busy." Stephen shrugged and backed out the door, making disgusting sounds as he went. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes again. She hadn't been very nice to her brother, but she couldn't help it. Why didn't anyone understand how miserable she felt? Jessica was still brooding a few minutes later when another knock sounded at her bedroom door. "What does he want now?" she grumbled. She started to yell at Stephen to go away again, but changed her mind. She would just ignore him instead. The knock came again, this time louder and more insistent. Angrily, Jessica went to the door and pulled it open. "What do you want now?" she demanded, and then she gasped. It wasn't Stephen, but her mother. "Gosh, Mom," she fumbled for words. "I thought it was Stephen again." Mrs. Wakefield smiled sympathetically. "So he's been showing you his Halloween costume too, huh? May I come in?" "Sure," Jessica shrugged. Mrs. Wakefield sat down on the edge of the bed. Reaching out to clasp her daughter's hands, she began to speak gently. "Jessica, I know how hard it was for you to lose the solo part, and I want you to know that I understand that, and so does Elizabeth. But I don't understand why you keep saying that you lost it unfairly." Jessica's heart leaped into her throat. "Mom, it's true. You should see how much better I dance than Elizabeth. The only reason Elizabeth got that part is that Madame Andre likes her better than me." "Jessica," Mrs. Wakefield said firmly, "I'm sure Madame Andre is a devoted teacher. She would never treat anyone unfairly. Besides, Elizabeth is your twin sister. You should be happy that the solo went to someone in the family." "But Mom," Jessica insisted, "you don't understand." "I do understand, Jessica, and what's more, you're being a very poor sport. I hope that I won't have to talk to you about this again." Jessica watched her mother leave the room. Then she burst into tears. "But Madame Andre is unfair," she sobbed into her pillow. "And you're unfair, and Elizabeth's unfair, and everybody's unfair." Chapter 9. Elizabeth tossed and turned all night thinking about her sister. Jessica hadn't only lost the part of Swinilda, but she had not even been chosen for one of the other solos. Poor Jessica, Elizabeth thought. It was easy to understand why she was heartbroken. Something else was bothering Elizabeth, too. She could not forget about Coppelia's mysterious disappearance or about the few moments in the dressing room when everyone was congratulating her. She had looked around the entire room, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. A moment later, Madame Andre had announced that the doll was missing, and it was very strange that Jessica was the only one in the class who did not help Madame Andre search for the doll. Jessica couldn't possibly have taken it, Elizabeth told herself for the 100th time. Jessica wouldn't do a thing like that, not even to get back at Madame for giving the solo to Elizabeth. But who else would take a life-size doll? Who else had a reason? Elizabeth got out of bed the next morning, more determined than ever to find a way to make up with Jessica. It scared her to think that her sister might actually have taken the doll just because she didn't get the solo part. She couldn't let Jessica be so unhappy, but what could Elizabeth do? How could she stop the situation from getting any further out of control? Jessica hadn't slept much that night. She had spent hours lying awake thinking about how to tell the unicorns that Elizabeth would star in the recital. Then she made her decision. She had no choice but to tell them the truth. The next morning, the unicorns were congregated on the front steps of the school. Jessica hurried over to them. "Hi, Jessica," said Leela Fowler. "Did you find out about the solo part yet?" "You did get it, didn't you?" asked Ellen Reitman. "Of course not," Jessica answered matter-of-factly. "I am the best dancer, but I'm not teacher's pet." "I hate teacher's pets," said Kimberly Haver. "They're always so goody-goody." "So who's this teacher's pet who stole the solo part away from you?" Leela asked angrily. "My own dear sister," Jessica loaded her voice with sarcasm. Elizabeth got the lead part. Elizabeth, you're kidding, said Leela. I can believe it, said Kimberly. Remember how she acted when she came to our unicorn meeting? What a goody-goody. You can say that again, said Mary Giacchio. Jessica bit her lip to keep from saying anything. Her sister was a bit of a goody-goody, of course, but it bothered her to hear anyone else say it. After all, Elizabeth was her identical twin, and even though she did have her faults, no one had the right to criticize her. I'll bet you're really furious, said Ellen. Not really, Jessica replied, hoping to sound casual. At least we kept it in the family. Jessica felt pleased with herself when the first bell rang and she headed for class. She had told the unicorns the truth, and even though she wouldn't be dancing the starring role, they all understood why she did not get it. Elizabeth and Amy had just sat down in the cafeteria at lunchtime when Caroline Pierce stopped at their table. Although Caroline wrote a column for the Sweet Valley Sixers, Elizabeth had groaned softly when she saw her coming. Caroline was the biggest gossip in Sweet Valley Middle School. Have you heard what the unicorns are saying about you, Elizabeth? Caroline asked in a hushed voice. It's all over school. What the unicorns are saying about me? No, why would they say anything about me? Caroline looked triumphant. They're saying the only reason you got the lead in your dance recital is that you're teacher's pet. I wonder where they got an idea like that. A stab of anger replaced the sympathy Elizabeth had been feeling for Jessica all morning. She knew exactly where the unicorns had gotten the idea. Only one person would call her teacher's pet. From Jessica, of course. She's a sore loser, and she can't admit that someone else could be better than she is at something. Elizabeth regretted her words the instant they were out. She should never have said something like that, especially in front of Caroline. Caroline would run straight back to Jessica and repeat every word. Soon the whole school would know. So what? Elizabeth thought bitterly. It was Jessica who had started the rumors in the first place, and it was Jessica who had tried to keep her from auditioning for the solo part. It was probably even Jessica who took Coppelia. She wanted to ruin the recital and get even with Madame for giving someone else the lead. That does it, she thought. This is war. Chapter 10. Elizabeth was determined not to do or say anything to Jessica, not after the terrible rumor she had started. At home that evening, she paced back and forth outside the door to the basement for more than an hour. She was waiting for her turn to practice her solo. Jessica had been pretending ever since dinner that she had no idea Elizabeth needed to practice too. Finally, Elizabeth couldn't stand it any longer. She opened the door and bounded down the basement steps. Jessica, will you stop hogging the bar, she commanded. I have to practice too, you know. Why do you have to practice? You've got it made. You know Madame Andre will tell you you're a wonderful dancer no matter how terrible you are. Terrible? How dare you call my dancing terrible? Cried Elizabeth. You're just mad because you're not number one for once in your life and you can't stand it. Elizabeth burst into tears, stormed back up the stairs, and slammed the door behind her. Jessica watched Elizabeth go, but she didn't feel sorry for her twin at all. She felt sorry for herself instead. She wasn't number one, at least not according to Madame Andre, and no matter how hard she practiced, she never would be. She was only wasting time practicing. Jessica, your father and I heard what you just said to your sister. It's time for another talk. Will you come up to the kitchen, please? Startled, Jessica looked up to see her mother standing in the doorway. It was clear from the tone of her voice that she meant business. Jessica squared her shoulders and went upstairs. She sat down at the kitchen table with her parents. Both her mother and father looked as solemn as jurors. Jessica swallowed hard. She knew what was coming. Your mother and I am very disturbed at the way you've been behaving over this recital, her father began. Why are you being so stubborn? Mrs. Wakefield insisted. Madame Andre has the right to choose anyone she wants to dance the lead. There's nothing you can do about that. You simply must accept it. Jessica couldn't answer. Her heart felt as if it would burst. Elizabeth really was teacher's pet. Why wouldn't anyone believe her? In her room, Elizabeth stared out the window, wishing that the ballet recital were over. I hate this whole thing, she said out loud. What fun is it to be the star when Jessica and I do nothing but fight? She changed out of her leotard and tights. She didn't feel like practicing anymore and thought about her predicament. She wondered over and over again what she was going to do. After a while, she went looking for her mother and found her in her study working on some drawings. "Mom," she began, "what am I going to do about Jessica? She practically hates me because I got the lead and she didn't, and she's telling everyone at school that the only reason I got it is because I'm teacher's pet." Mrs. Wakefield looked sympathetically at her daughter. "I know, sweetheart. Your father and I heard what you said to her a little while ago. We talked to her, but I'm not sure it did any good." "What am I going to do?" Elizabeth asked again. "Jessica had the same chance I had. She auditioned for Madame Andre, too, and Madame picked me. How can I prove to her that I'm not teacher's pet?" "I don't think that you can," said Mrs. Wakefield. "I know how much you love your sister, and so do your dad and I, but we can't always give in to her just because she can't get what she wants every single time. It would be wrong, and it would be bad for Jessica." "Thanks, Mom," Elizabeth sighed deeply. Her mother's advice was not what she had hoped it would be. She needed to know how to make things better. What her mother had said was that if she tried to make up with Jessica, things would get worse. But how could they? It seemed to Elizabeth that right now, things were just about as bad as they could get. With the recital getting closer, Madame Andre called another special practice on Saturday morning. The twins didn't say a word to each other as they walked to the dance studio the next morning. They turned their backs to each other as they changed into their dance clothes in the dressing room. When the class filed into the studio a few minutes later, Madame looked very grim. She brought up the subject of the missing doll immediately. "My poor Coppelia, as everybody knows, someone has taken our precious doll. I cannot imagine where she could be. Who would take her? But I'm afraid that is only part of the problem. I have tried and tried to find another life-size doll. I have called toy stores, department stores, doll hospitals, anyone who has anything to do with dolls. No one can tell me where to find another doll of that size. We must have a life-size doll. I ask you, do any of you have a doll the size of Coppelia that we can use in the recital?" The hopeful look in Madame Andre's eyes faded as the girls looked questioningly at one another, and all shook their heads. Elizabeth shot a quick glance at Jessica, but her twin's expression did not give her any clues to whether Jessica had stolen Coppelia. "Well, then, that is enough chatter for today," Madame announced abruptly. "Corde ballet, center s'il vous plaît. Swanilda, warm up at the bar while the corps is rehearsing." Dutifully, Elizabeth went to the bar and began going through the routine, but out of the corner of her eye she could see the others practicing the chorus number. Most of all, she could see Jessica. Elizabeth caught her breath as her twin whirled around the room in perfect time to the music. She was a beautiful dancer, far better than anyone else in the corps. She really is too good to be just one of the chorus, Elizabeth realized. The idea was disturbing, especially with all the trouble between them. If only I had been here when she auditioned for Madame Andre, thought Elizabeth, then I would know who the best dancer really is. "Elizabeth, you were supposed to be working, not daydreaming," Madame Andre called out. Elizabeth jumped. She hadn't realized that she had stopped when her thoughts turned to her sister. "And Elizabeth," Madame went on, in a more kindly tone, "while I have your attention, let me work with you a bit. You are having a little trouble with a few of your steps." Elizabeth felt relieved. Now surely she could overcome the problems she was having with the solo. Madame Andre patiently instructed her on the proper way to execute the steps. Elizabeth tried over and over, but still she was having trouble. "You are just nervous about the recital," Madame assured her. "Practice what I have shown you at home. I am sure you will master the steps soon." Before she dismissed the class, Madame Andre gave each girl her costume for the recital. Elizabeth was scarcely aware of the oohs and ahs all around her as the others were handed their brightly colored dresses. All she could see was the beautiful blue costume of Swanilda, with yards and yards of netting underneath the skirt and shiny sequins covering the top. "I will practice at home," she promised herself as she took the dress from Madame Andre. "I will be the best Swanilda ever." Jessica knew that Elizabeth hurried home from school every afternoon to work on her solo. She also knew that Elizabeth was trying very hard to get the steps just right in time for the recital, And every day Jessica noticed how much more nervous her twin was getting, so much so that her fouets and jetés were getting worse instead of better. On Friday afternoon, the day before dress rehearsal and just 2 days before the recital, Jessica sauntered down to the basement pretending to ignore Elizabeth, who was practicing her solo. Jessica opened the clothes dryer, hoping to find her new hot pink sweatshirt there. She'd looked everywhere else, and the dryer was her final hope. She dug through the warm load of clothing, but didn't really notice what was there. Instead, she kept glancing at Elizabeth, who was working on the most difficult part of the solo, a series of pirouettes. Elizabeth always began correctly, in 4th position, but midway through the second turn, she would wobble and lose her balance. Jessica's anger and resentment began to melt as she watched Elizabeth try to master the turns, a look of utter panic on her face. She's going to make a terrible Swinilda if she doesn't get that step right, thought Jessica. She'll embarrass herself and Mom and Dad and me. Jessica tried to fight down the tide of sympathy that was sweeping over her. Part of her wanted to see Elizabeth fail so she could say, "I told you so." But the rest of her couldn't forget that no matter what, Elizabeth was still the most important person in the world to her. Finally, Jessica couldn't just stand there and do nothing. "Oh, watch me, Elizabeth," she called out. "You aren't holding your head right. Keep it to the front as long as possible, and then turn it really fast like this." Jessica assumed 4th position, moved into her pirouette, and continued to whirl around and around on one foot in a series of perfect fouets. Elizabeth caught her breath as Jessica moved across the floor. Her twin had never had a problem with fouets. She could do them perfectly from the beginning. Elizabeth tried again, holding her head the way Jessica had instructed. This time Elizabeth could feel the acceleration as she whipped her head around at just the right instant. She completed the step more gracefully than ever before. "Wow," she said, a smile lighting her face. "That was a lot better, wasn't it?" Jessica regarded her with cool eyes. "You need to work on your jetés, too. Watch this." It was the same with Jessica's jetés. Her jumps were higher than anyone else's in the class. And as Jessica explained the step, Elizabeth understood why. Again, Elizabeth tried the jump, and again she could feel the improvement. "Then why was I chosen to dance the lead instead of Jessica?" Elizabeth wondered. A cold feeling of dread settled over her. The question had been nagging at her for days, but she couldn't ignore it any longer. Was Jessica right? Was she really teacher's pet? She couldn't stand to be involved in something that unfair, especially if it meant Jessica was being hurt. "Thanks, Jess," she said a few minutes later. "I think I can do them better now." Elizabeth wanted to say more, but she knew that words alone would never help Jessica feel better. That night, Elizabeth tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Pictures flooded her mind of all the times Madame Andre had singled her out for praise, complimenting her and using her as an example for the rest of the class. And yet, she thought with amazement, Jessica was the best dancer all along. Why hadn't Madame Andre noticed her? Elizabeth frowned and stared at the dark ceiling for a long time as the awful truth began to sink in. Jessica had been right all the time. Elizabeth was teacher's pet. That's why she had been chosen to dance the solo. Tears trickled onto Elizabeth's pillow as she remembered how much fun it had been to get all the attention and flattery. But poor Jessica, she thought. It should have been her. She loves dancing just as much as I love writing. What if Mr. Bowman had wanted Jessica to be editor of the Sweet Valley Sixers instead of me? It would have been wrong, and Madame Andre was wrong. Something had to be done. But what? Chapter 11. At dress rehearsal the next morning, Elizabeth was still miserable, and Jessica's kindness was short-lived. She had been as cool as ever at the breakfast table and ignored Elizabeth whenever she tried to talk to her. Obviously, she was sorry that she had helped Elizabeth the day before. To make matters worse, Madame Andre had praised Elizabeth highly when she danced her solo for the class and got the steps almost perfect. "Now see," she had cried, "all it takes is practice." Elizabeth leaned against the bar. She scarcely cared if she wrinkled her costume as she watched the corps go through its dance for a second time. She couldn't help but notice Jessica. Poor Jessica, she thought. Dressed in the same costume as the rest of the corps, she drooped like a wilted flower among the bright bouquet of dancers. She wasn't used to being one of the crowd. Even though she was obviously miserable, Jessica danced beautifully, performing every step perfectly. Why doesn't Madame Andre see how good she is? Elizabeth wondered. Finally, rehearsal was over, and Madame motioned for the girls to sit around her on the floor. I am desperate, she said, wringing her hands and looking at them with pleading eyes. I still cannot find a doll for our recital. I have brought this one, she said, pulling a much smaller doll out of a paper bag. But you can see she will never do. She is much too small. Think again. Does anyone have a suggestion? We must have a Coppelia or our dance will be ruined. When all the girls shook their heads sadly, Amy Sutton shyly raised her hand. Madame, I'll take your place, she offered. I can sit on the stage and be very still. I know I can do it. Madame stared at Amy in amazement. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. You are very generous, Amy. Are you sure that you want to give up your chance to dance in the corps de ballet? Oh, yes, Madame, Amy blushed. I think I'd make a better Coppelia. It's settled then, and remember, everyone, tomorrow is the big day. Practice, practice, practice. Elizabeth lingered in the dressing room while Madame gave Amy a costume and a dark wig for her role as Coppelia. She rushed up to her friend when she finally came back to change. I just want to tell you how nice I think you are for giving up your part in the recital to be Coppelia. What gave you such a super idea? Amy shrugged, looking embarrassed. It's not giving up much when you dance the way I do, she said. Elizabeth wondered if she was happier to be playing the role of the doll than dancing. She reached out and squeezed Amy's hand. It's still a great idea, she told her. Elizabeth went home after practice and rushed to the one place she could always go to be alone to think. It was an old pine tree in the backyard. The twins had played among its giant roots when they were younger, pretending it was a secret hideout. As they grew, the two of them went there when being twins was more important than being with other people. They knew they could sit there without anyone seeing them and talk over private things. But over the past year or so, Jessica had gotten tired of the old pine tree, and it had become Elizabeth's special place to dream or write or think over her problems, like now. She couldn't stop thinking about Amy Sutton. Amy would be so much happier and better being Coppelia than dancing in the corps. If only I could switch roles with Jessica, Elizabeth thought. Then she could be the star, as she deserves. At first, Elizabeth thought that maybe she should go to Jessica and offer to trade places. She would simply say, Jessica, I think you should dance the part of Swinilda, and I'll take your place in the corps de ballet. You really deserve the lead, and you'll do a much better job than I ever could. But Elizabeth knew that Jessica would never dance a solo if she got it that way. No, there had to be something else she could do, something that would convince Jessica that she had to dance the part of Swinilda. Elizabeth sat among the pine roots until the sun was low in the afternoon sky, but she could not come up with a plan. Even going to Madame Andre wouldn't work. Madame had made up her mind that Elizabeth should dance the lead, and nothing would change her mind. Elizabeth got up to head back to the house. It was getting late, and her parents might be wondering where she was. Suddenly, she jolted forward, tripping over one of the roots, and barely catching herself before she fell down on the grass. For a ballerina, I'm not very graceful, she thought with an embarrassed laugh. But an instant later, her laughter turned to joy. She had it. She had a plan. Elizabeth thought about her wonderful idea all through dinner. She hardly noticed Jessica's angry glances in her direction, but it didn't matter what Jessica thought, because tomorrow everything would be okay again. Right after dinner, Elizabeth rushed to the phone and looked around quickly to make sure that Jessica wasn't nearby. Then she dialed Amy's number. Next to Jessica, Amy was her best friend, and Elizabeth had to tell someone about her great idea. Hi, Elizabeth, Amy said a minute later. Getting nervous about tomorrow? Yes, but it's not what you think. I know now that Madame Andre made a mistake. Jessica should dance the solo part, not me. Elizabeth, Amy scolded her, don't tell me that Jessica has convinced you that you're a teacher's pet. No, Elizabeth answered confidently. I figured it out for myself when Jessica showed me how to do the steps I was having trouble with. She could do the steps perfectly all along. I should have seen it before. But worse, Madame Andre should have seen it. She was unfair, and I have to do something about it. But what? Asked Amy. Well, I've got a plan. Excitement filled Elizabeth's voice. Tomorrow the whole family will load into the van to go to the recital. Everything will be fine until we get to the parking lot. Then, just as I get out, I'll pretend to step down wrong and twist my ankle. I'll pretend that it's really hurting and that there is no way that I could go on stage and dance. Jessica will have to take over. But Elizabeth, you'll miss the whole recital. You won't even get to be on stage. Besides, what if Jessica says no? She won't say no, Elizabeth said confidently. She's wanted to dance that solo for too long. But what about Madame Andre? What will she say about Jessica taking your part? We're identical twins, silly. She won't know, at least not until the recital is over. Then she'll see what a wonderful dancer Jessica really is. Don't you see? It's a perfect plan. Gosh, Elizabeth, if you really think Jessica deserves a part, I suppose it's the right thing to do, but I still wish that you could dance the lead. Thanks, Amy. The girls said goodnight and hung up. Elizabeth hurried to her room, thinking that tomorrow would be a fantastic day after all. Jessica was sprawled across her bed, feeling as if it were the end of the world. Tomorrow was recital day, the day she had dreamed of for so long, only now it was going to be a nightmare. She rolled over onto her side and glared at the bright red peasant costume hanging on the knob of her closet door. It's ugly and I hate it, and I look just like everybody else when I wear it, she cried aloud. She picked up her pillow and threw it at the costume, sending it tumbling to the floor. Elizabeth had been so cheerful all evening that Jessica had wanted to throw up. She had stomped off to her room to be miserable alone, but now she had an idea. She got out of bed and walked to her dresser, smiling at the face in the mirror as if it were another person. I'll show them all, she said confidently. I'll show Madame Andre, and I'll show Elizabeth too. I won't wear that ugly costume. I won't dance in the Corps de Ballet. I won't even go to their stupid recital. Chapter 12. Elizabeth was awake long before her alarm went off the next morning. She had thought so much about faking a sprained ankle that she could almost feel it throbbing. It was a wonderful plan, and she knew it would work. She dressed quickly, stopping only once to look wistfully at the beautiful costume of Swanilda. It made her sad to think that after all the long hours of practice, she wouldn't get to wear the costume or even be in the recital. But it would be worth it, she thought resolutely. Everyone was at the breakfast table except Jessica. In a way, Elizabeth was relieved. It was going to be hard to keep her secret until it was time to leave for the recital. Well, if it isn't our star dancer, said Mr. Wakefield. Are you all set for your big day? Morning, Dad, Elizabeth said, pouring cereal into a bowl. I'm as set as I'll ever be, I guess. I'm already getting nervous. Break a leg, declared Stephen. Then he grinned sheepishly and added, That's what they always say in show business, isn't it? Elizabeth nodded, fighting a giggle. Stephen was closer to the truth than he realized. Where's Jessica? She asked. At the sound of her name, Jessica walked into the kitchen. As she sat down at the table, she looked more miserable than Elizabeth had ever seen her. I have an announcement to make, she said. I am not going to the recital this afternoon. What? Elizabeth cried. You can't mean that. You have to go. You're part of the Corps de Ballet. The Corps de Ballet, Jessica echoed bitterly. That's just a fancy way of saying the chorus. No one will miss me if I'm not there. But Jessica, her mother insisted, what about Madame Andre? She's counting on you. Madame Andre never noticed me before, so why would she notice today? Angry tears filled Jessica's eyes. Honey, you shouldn't get so upset. There will be other recitals, said Mr. Wakefield. Fine, said Jessica. I'll go to those, but I won't go to this one. Elizabeth fought to keep from panicking. This wasn't the way things were supposed to go. What was she going to do if Jessica refused to go to the recital? Boy, talk about being jealous, Stephen said, shaking his head. Jealous? Shrieked Jessica. How dare you call me jealous? It's true. Elizabeth is teacher's pet, and that's the only reason she's getting to dance the lead. You're staying home just because you can't stand to hear Elizabeth get all the applause, Stephen bullied her. Jessica gasped and stared wide-eyed at Stephen for a moment. Of course I can stand to hear Elizabeth get applause, she said. And Elizabeth was sure she heard a slight catch in Jessica's voice. Okay, I'll go to that dumb recital, but I won't dance. There, are you satisfied? Jessica did not stay around for his answer. Instead, she jumped up from the table and stormed out of the room. Elizabeth felt limp with exhaustion. She gave Stephen a grateful smile. Then she headed for her own room. She planned to stay out of Jessica's sight until it was time to leave. She couldn't take a chance on anything else messing up her plan. Jessica was sullen as she climbed into the van a few hours later. Her mother had insisted that she bring along her costume, even though she wasn't planning to wear it, because Madame Andre wanted all costumes returned to her right after the performance. Jessica tossed the peasant outfit into the empty seat beside her and stared at it as if it were a poisonous snake. She felt tears welling in her eyes as Elizabeth got in. She was carrying her beautiful blue costume. Jessica was silent all through the short ride across town to the auditorium. She wished she hadn't let Stephen trick her into coming. She knew she was going to be just miserable. When they reached the parking lot, Jessica thought that maybe she could slip out of the crowded auditorium just before the recital started. She could say she was going to the ladies' room, but she would really go outside and hide in the van. Later, she could say that the ushers wouldn't let her back in after the recital started. She was picturing the whole scene and feeling a little better when she heard a yelp of pain. Looking down quickly, she saw Elizabeth sitting on the pavement clutching her left ankle. "What happened?" Jessica cried. "Lizzie, are you okay?" Elizabeth looked up at her through tear-filled eyes. "Oh, Jess, I twisted my ankle. I jumped out of the van the way I always do. I don't know what happened." Jessica was at her twin's side at once, and she and her mother formed a crutch to help Elizabeth to her feet. "Can you step down on it?" Mrs. Wakefield asked. "I don't know. I'll try. Ouch!" She tightened her grip on Jessica's shoulder and started to cry. "Oh, Jess, what am I going to do? I'll never be able to dance now." Jessica looked at her sister in surprise. An idea flashed in her mind, but she dismissed it instantly. As badly as she wanted to dance a solo, she would never want to do it at her twin's expense. "Let me have a look at that ankle," said Mr. Wakefield. Bending down, he pressed it gently and then rotated it one turn in each direction. "It seems all right," he said. "Nothing broken anyway. I do think you ought to stay off it, though. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know how important the solo was to you." "Oh, Jessica, you simply have to go on in my place," implored Elizabeth. "Without Swanilda, the recital would be ruined." Jessica hesitated. "But Lizzie, are you sure you can't dance? Madame Andre would be furious if anyone danced Swanilda but you." Elizabeth put weight on her left foot and jerked up off the ground again. "Ouch! I can't, Jess. It's no use. You'll have to go on for me." "But what about Madame Andre?" Jessica insisted. "Don't tell her," Elizabeth said brightly. "If you're right and she chose me only because I'm her pet, she'll never know the difference." Jessica's face lit up. "Oh, Lizzie, I'll do it. I'll be the best Swanilda in the world. You'll see." She grabbed the beautiful blue costume out of the van and raced toward the auditorium to change. Chapter 13. The ushers were just beginning to seat people when Elizabeth, her parents, and Stephen entered the building. The lobby of Sweet Valley High School was filled with nervous parents and grandparents, all eagerly awaiting the performance. Kids from school and people from town were starting to file in too, and Elizabeth was filled with a mixture of happiness and sadness as she prepared to sit in the audience. Jessica would make a wonderful Swanilda, she reminded herself as she tried to imagine the chaos in the dressing room. She hoped that in the excitement no one would recognize Jessica and spoil the plan. "Elizabeth." Elizabeth turned at the sound of her name. To her surprise, Amy Sutton stood beside her, wearing the peasant costume of the Corps de Ballet. In her hand was the dress and dark wig of Coppelia, which she handed to Elizabeth before she could speak. "Amy, what is this? What are you doing?" asked Elizabeth, staring first at Amy, then at Coppelia's costume, and then back at Amy again. "I want you to wear this," Amy said shyly. "You should at least be on stage, even if you don't get to dance." Elizabeth started to protest. She knew that Amy would rather play Coppelia than dance and risk making a mistake. But Amy was looking at her with clear, confident eyes, and Elizabeth understood that it was her way of being a true friend. "Thanks, Amy. You're super," said Elizabeth. She whispered the change of plans to her parents, and then together she and Amy headed backstage. Madame Andre was in conference with the piano player and far too busy to notice Elizabeth duck into the dressing room and slip on Coppelia's costume. Most of the other dancers, including Jessica, were already dressed. Elizabeth could see her twins standing backstage, looking calm and beautiful. She was the perfect Swanilda, thought Elizabeth. The recital was ready to begin. The modern dance class rushed past Elizabeth to find their places on the stage. A moment later, the music swelled and they began their performance, but Elizabeth scarcely noticed. Her mind was on the trick that she and Jessica were playing on Madame. What if it didn't work? What if Madame realized that it was Jessica in Swanilda's costume and refused to let her go on? What would happen then? The recital would be ruined, not just for Madame, but for all of the girls in the class, and it would be all Elizabeth's fault. Applause filled the auditorium as the first group of dancers finished their number. Only one more class would dance, and then Coppelia would be performed as the final number of the afternoon. Again, the audience responded with warm applause as the second-year class rushed back into the wings, breathless and glowing from a successful performance. It was time, and the corps de ballet lined up to go on stage. Coppelia was to hold a book and sit in an alcove of the house where Coppelius, the doll maker, had his workshop. Elizabeth sat down in the alcove while the girls dancing the parts of the other dolls took their places around the room. Her book was lying on the seat beside her. Elizabeth picked it up and wished a silent good luck to Jessica, Amy, and all her friends in the ballet class. Taking a deep breath, she prepared to watch the performance. "Places, everyone," she heard Madame Andre call. Elizabeth struck the stiff pose of a doll. An instant later, the music started, the curtain rose, and she caught her breath as the dance began. The first to come on stage were the corps de ballet, moving together in perfect step. Elizabeth wanted to smile even though she had to keep her face perfectly still. They had never danced so well in practice. Even Amy Sutton was graceful. Next were the solos of the dolls, and they too performed better than ever before. Suddenly, the music changed. Elizabeth felt a tingling sensation travel up her back. She knew that music well. It was Swanhilda's solo. A hush fell over the audience as Jessica came onto the stage. She moved with extraordinary style and grace. Elizabeth forgot about being Coppelia as she watched her sister dance. Her eyes followed Swanhilda's every move. Jessica truly did deserve the lead, Elizabeth thought. Thunderous applause drowned out the last notes of the music as Jessica finished her solo and bowed low to the audience. She rose, smiling to shouts of "Bravo! Bravo!" As the audience began to file slowly out of the auditorium, Madame Andre hurried up the aisle. "Mr. and Mrs. Wakefield," she called, "please wait a moment." She began to pump Mr. Wakefield's hand the instant she reached them. "Congratulations! I must tell you, she is fabulous, a unique talent, my star pupil, and she's never been better. I assure you that Elizabeth is the best Swanhilda we have ever had." "I think you made a mistake, Madame Andre," Mrs. Wakefield said quietly. "That was not Elizabeth." Madame Andre's eyes grew wide. "What? What? Not Elizabeth? What on earth do you mean?" "Elizabeth hurt her ankle outside in the parking lot, and Jessica took her place. There wasn't time to explain to you then. It was too close to the performance." "Surely it can't be," said Madame Andre. She was shaking her head in disbelief. "Jessica could never dance that well. Oh, my!" Her words trailed off and her face clouded with sadness. "It is obvious that she can. How could I have been so blind? Excuse me, but I must find her and tell her how wonderful she was." Jessica was standing alone in the middle of the stage, thinking of her moment as a star, when Madame Andre came up behind her. "Jessica, Jessica, you were fantastic," Madame cried. Jessica was stunned. So Madame had found out. "You aren't angry that I took Elizabeth's place?" she asked wearily. "I know all about that. It is a blessing that you knew the dance and could give such a wonderful performance." Out of the corner of her eye, Jessica could see someone rushing toward her wearing the costume of Coppelia. It was Amy Sutton. No, it was Elizabeth, and she wasn't even limping the slightest bit. "Congratulations, Jessica. You were wonderful," cried Elizabeth. "But what about your ankle?" asked Jessica. "I thought it was sprained. I thought you couldn't walk on it." Elizabeth pulled off the dark wig of Coppelia and took a deep breath. "You were right, Jessica. You did deserve to dance a solo. I knew that when you helped me at home. I could see that you did all the steps perfectly all along. I was the one who was having trouble. It wasn't fair for me to dance Swanhilda and let you dance in the corps. That was when I decided to trick you into changing places with me." "Wow," said Jessica. "It was a good thing I decided to come to the recital." Jessica paused an instant. "Oh, Lizzie, thank you for all you did. You are the most wonderful sister in the world." Elizabeth turned to Madame Andre. "I hope you aren't angry with me. I guess I tricked you too." Madame Andre smiled and tears shone in her eyes. She put an arm around each twin and hugged them both. Then she said, "I am not angry. I am sorry that I made such a terrible mistake. I thought that Jessica was not serious at all about her ballet, but now I see how wrong I was. I hope you will forgive me. You are both stars." Amy Sutton had been standing nearby, and she heard Madame Andre's confession. With a deep sigh, she approached the dance teacher. "Madame Andre," she said, I'm afraid that you're not the only one who needs to confess something. She looked down. I'm the one who took Apelia. What? Said Madame Andre. Surely not you, Amy. Why on earth would you do a thing like that? I was afraid of being in the recital. I'm a terrible dancer, and I was worried that I'd fall down and embarrass everyone. So I watched for a chance to take her when you were busy with something else. Then I hid her under a stack of props in the storage room, hoping that you wouldn't find her. I planned to volunteer to take her place all along. Oh, my precious Amy, said Madame Andre. I'm so sorry that ballet is so hard for you. I am sorry you had to hide Coppelia, but I'm proud that you were such a good friend to Elizabeth. It was brave of you to put aside your fear so that she could be on stage with her sister. I am not angry with you. After all, not everyone is like Jessica, born to dance. Now come along, everyone. Let's go to my studio for a party. We have much to celebrate. A beautiful recital, wonderful friendships, and a brand new star. Chapter 14. Halloween is not too far off, and I've got a great idea for our costumes, Jessica said a few days later as the twins were bicycling home from ballet class. Let's ask Madame Andre if we can borrow the recital costumes. Then I can be Swanilda one more time, and you can be Coppelia. Don't you think that's a great idea? Elizabeth frowned. I'm not sure. What if something happens to the costumes while we're wearing them? Madame Andre would never forgive us. Oh, Elizabeth, don't be such a worrywart. What could possibly happen to them? Have you forgotten last year already? Asked Elizabeth. Our costumes were ruined. Jessica sighed. How could she forget? A whole gang of boys, including their own brother, Stephen, had been playing their annual Halloween prank on old Mr. and Mrs. Mercandy. This time they were decorating their porch with shaving cream. When Mrs. Mercandy opened the door and screeched at them, they all ran off, only to find Jessica, Elizabeth, and some of their friends heading for a party on the next block. The shaving cream ended up all over the girls. That won't happen again, Jessica insisted. Remember how Stephen was grounded for 2 weeks after Dad found out what he did? Besides, I'm sure they'll think of something new and even meaner to do to the Mercandy place this year, so our costumes will be safe. I still don't think that asking Madame for the ballet costumes is a good idea, said Elizabeth. Well then, let's let Madame decide if it's a good idea, suggested Jessica. Everybody in Sweet Valley knows that the Mercandy place is haunted, and that Mrs. Mercandy is a witch and keeps crazy old Mr. Mercandy locked in the attic. I'm sure Madame Andre heard all about what goes on Halloween night. If she's worried that something will happen to the costumes, she'll just say no. Oh, come on, Lizzie, let's ask her. Honestly, Jess, just thinking about the Mercandy place and Halloween gives me the creeps, said Elizabeth. Jessica let out a squeal of joy. Me too. Hey, let's ride our bikes by there on our way home. It will help us get into the mood for Halloween. Before Elizabeth could say anything, Jessica had rounded a corner heading toward the street where the old Mercandy house stood. Jessica, come back, Elizabeth shouted, but her twin ignored her. Elizabeth did not wish to argue, so she pedaled after Jessica. She didn't like to go past the ugly old house, but she couldn't let Jessica go alone. As the twins neared the Mercandy mansion, they were careful to stay on the opposite side of the street. Jessica had heard that anyone who got close to the house would be snatched inside and never heard from again. She didn't want to find out if the story was true. When they were almost across from the house, they stopped their bikes and peered out at it from behind a tree. I thought you were scared of the Mercandy house, Elizabeth whispered. I'm just in a spooky mood, Jessica said, but believe me, I'm not getting any closer. Don't those windows upstairs look creepy? They look like devil's eyes, and they're staring straight at us. Just stop that, Elizabeth insisted. The old place is scary enough. Let's get out of here. Just as they started to leave their hiding place, a taxi moved slowly up the street and stopped in front of the Mercandy mansion. Don't tell me they have company, Jessica said with a gasp. Who on earth would visit the Mercandys? The twins watched in fascination as a dark-haired girl about their own age got out of the taxi. She walked right up to the house and set a small cardboard suitcase on the porch. The taxi driver looked around nervously before pulling a larger suitcase out of the trunk and starting after her. Suddenly he stopped. He looked as if something had made him change his mind about carrying the suitcase any farther, and he set it on the curb. This is as far as I go, miss, the twins heard him say. The girls pushed a lock of long dark hair out of her eyes and looked sadly first toward the house and then toward the driver. That's okay. She walked back to the curb and handed him some money. The driver looked relieved as he hurried back to his cab and drove away, leaving the girl alone in front of the house. Elizabeth tapped Jessica on the shoulder and whispered as softly as she could, "Maybe we should say something to her. You know, ask her if she's certain she's got the right house." Jessica's eyes widened as she looked back at her sister. "You've got to be kidding." "Oh, come on, Jess. It scares me to think of her actually going into that house." Elizabeth glanced back toward the house, planning to call out to the girl. Instead, she gasped, unable to believe her eyes. "Look, Jessica, she's gone." Jessica followed Elizabeth's glance. Sure enough, the dark-haired girl was nowhere to be seen. It happened, just like the stories say. The Burgundy snatched her right off the sidewalk. "Let's get out of here now." The twins got on their bikes and pedaled away furiously without saying another word. Elizabeth could feel her heart pounding. She didn't really believe that the Burgundy house was haunted, although the stories made Halloween more fun, and she certainly didn't believe that the girl had been snatched right off the sidewalk. Still, she couldn't help wondering who the girl was and just what she was doing at the scariest house in Sweet Valley. Who is the dark-haired girl, and what is the secret of the Burgundy mansion? Find out in The Haunted House, Book 3 in Sweet Valley Twins.